Everybody, Piscean here, and today we're going to go over a few different things here in this video. We're going to talk about advanced astrology science modules. We're going to decrease that size. So advanced astrology science modules, and this is essentially a rigorous interdisciplinary curriculum for the series Astrological Researcher. These modules integrate astronomy, statistics, chronobiology, physics, and systems theory to elevate astrology from divination to a testable, though non-consensus discipline. Each module includes learning objectives, core content, mathematical applications, and critical thinking exercises. So, we're going to go through these modules step by step, module by module, and then we're going to go and jump ahead to our next tab, which is, we have 8 modules, by the way. So we're also going to do our Advanced Astrology Research Journal. And these are going to be log entries from the desk of Dr. E.M. Sterling, ISAR CIP, Certified Astrological Professional, which is obviously hypothetical. This is not a real person. Hypothetical lore. Alright, so we're going to begin with this though. We're going to go over 8 different modules and a appendix, so this is going to be pretty fun. And I love teaching you guys astrology. I really do. I want more people to be on board with this. So we're going to go over 8 modules, and we're going to go over a appendix, which I've done in previous videos. So our first module is Celestial Mechanics for Astrologers. We have our learning objectives, which we'll say are LO. So we have a few of them here. Calculate planetary positions using Keplerian elements and ephemerides. Understand the difference between sidereal, tropical, and heliocentric coordinate systems. Compute rising times and house cusps trigonometrically. Model planetary speed variations, all right? Retrograde loops, stations. So these are our learning objectives. Now we have our core content, or our CC. We start with orbital parameters, all right? Eccentricity, semi-major axes, inclination, longitude of ascending node, argument of perihelion. Kepler's laws, elliptical orbits, equal areas and equal times, harmonic law, P square, OCA 3 square. So for astrology, why Mars appears to retrograde every 25 months, Earth overtaking outer planet. Alright. And now we see our coordinate systems. Ecliptic coordinates, tropical longitude measured from vernal equinox, alright? Precesses at 50.3 per year. We have our equatorial coordinates, our RA, right ascension, and declination, used for house systems. We have precession correction for ancient charts, convert from sidereal to tropical zodiac, using Ayanamsha. Alright? So now we have our house systems mathematics. Placidus is time-based division via hour circles. Cook is spatial division via tertiary great circles. Regiomontanus is intersection of prime vertical and celestial equator. Calculation exercise given sidereal time and observer latitude. Compute the ascendant using the current formula, if you can. And we have a mathematical application. Plot daily motion of Mercury over one synodic cycle, which is 116 days. Identify stationary points where apparent motion changes sign. Compute derivative of ecliptic longitude versus time. We have a critical thinking exercise here. Compare the difference in house cusps between Placidus and Regiomontanus for a chart at 60 degrees north latitude. Discuss why some astrologers reject quadrant house systems at extreme latitudes. All right. Module 2 is Statistical Astrology, Testing Correlations. We have our LO, Design Blinded Controlled Astrological Studies. Also apply chi-square or chi-square t tests and correlation coefficients to astrological data. understand the Mars effect controversy, Gauquelin, distinguish between post hoc rationalization and prospective prediction, right? And then we have our CC, the Gauquelin legacy. So Michel Gauquelin's study of 25,000 European professionals, Mars in key sectors, rising, culminating, correlated with athletes. Replication attempts. Ertel, 1992, confirmed effect with odds ratio 1.2, p being lesser than 0.001. And our criticism is selection bias, multiple comparisons, and file drawer problem. All right. Now we look at our null hypothesis testing for astrology. Our null hypothesis says no relationship between planetary positions and human traits. Our test design is to collect birth times, blind astrologers, match charts to case histories. And our example study is 300 charts for extroversion versus introversion. We predict sun and fire signs, higher extroversion scores, EPQR, and we calculate the t-test. Our time twin study. So identical twins with the same birth time down to the minute have identical charts but different life outcomes, right? However, studies show significant similarity in temperament, heritability 50%, leaving room for environment and possibly cosmic timing. Astrology's counter, rectification, birth times recorded in hospitals are approximate, soul chooses the exact moment. All right, our mathematical application here. Given a data set of 1,000 birth charts and career types, military, artists, scientists, compute the frequency of Mars and Aries for each group. Perform chi-square tests for independence, report p-value, and interpret. And we have our CTE. The Mars effect is small, odds ratio 1.2. Does it survive Bonferroni correction for testing 12 signs multiplied by 10 planets multiplied by 4 house sectors? Discuss the replication crises in psychology and how astrology studies suffer the same pitfalls. All right, module 3, we would go over chronobiology, planetary rhythms, and biological clocks. Map solar, lunar, and planetary cycles onto human physiology, circadian and infradian rhythms, and this is our LO. Understand the role of geomagnetic activity, Schumann resonances, as a potential mediator, and analyze birth season's effects on dopamine, serotonin, and thyroid function. All right. So now we have our CC, the lunar cycle in human behavior. Meta-analysis of 50 studies, small but significant effect of full moon on sleep duration, average reduction 20 minutes, p being lesser than 0.05. Menstrual cycle, average 29.5 days, identical to synodic month. However, no correlation between onset of menses and lunar phase in large samples, contradicting folklore. Proposed mechanism, lunar gravity affects cerebrospinal fluid pressure. No, tidal force of moon on human body is negligible, being lesser, this is greater than whatever the number is of 0.0001% of gravity. So, more plausible, moonlight suppression of melatonin via retinal light receptors. We're also going to go over solar cycles, Schwabe cycle, 11 years. So, our sunspot number correlates with geomagnetic storms, which affect the pineal gland via cryptochrome. Studies increase myocardial infarctions during geomagnetic storms, RR equals 1.4. In our astrological correlate, sun's activity may modulate Mars-Jupiter effects. And then we have our birth season and personality, season of birth effect. Well replicated in epidemiology, spring births, Aries Taurus, have higher novelty-seeking dopamine receptor DRD4 polymorphism. Winter births, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, have 15% higher lifetime risk of schizophrenia, maternal vitamin D deficiency. And astrology's claim, season of birth shapes temperament, partially supported, but mechanism is photoperiod and nutrition, not planetary aspects. All right. We have our mathematical application, obtain a data set of birth dates and seasonal affective disorder, SAD diagnosis, group by season, astrological signs, compute odds ratio for SAD and autumn births, Libra Scorpio versus spring births, perform logistic regression controlling for latitude. In our CTE, if birth season effects are real but caused by sunlight and temperature, does that validate or invalidate tropical astrology? Discuss. The zodiac is a seasonal calendar, so astrology may be an ancient encoding of chronobiology, not mystical, but empirical. Right, module 4 is synchronicity theory, physics and non-local correspondence. Our LO shows we have to explain Carl Jung's concept of synchronicity, a causal connecting principle. We also need to relate to quantum entanglement, Bell's theorem, and the Copenhagen interpretation. as well as differentiate synchronicity from correlation, statistical, and causation, physical. So we see RCC, Jung and Pauli's correspondence. Wolfgang Pauli, Nobel physicist, collaborated with Jung on the psychoid realm, where matter and psyche share a common ground. Synchronicity defined as meaningful coincidence not explained by cause and effect. Astrological chart as a synchronistic phenomenon. Planetary positions at birth are not the cause of character. Rather, the universe arranges both events to reflect a common archetypal pattern. All right? Now, we see our quantum mechanics and non-locality. Bell's inequality violation aspect 1982. Entangled particles correlate instantaneously across any distance. This does not allow faster than light information transfer, but does imply that the universe is non-local. Parts are interconnected outside spacetime. In our potential bridge, if subatomic particles can be non-locally correlated, why not macrocosmic bodies, planets, and human events? However, no known mechanism, right? Parsimony principle, Occam's razor, the burden of proof. Synchronicity is unfalsifiable. Any coincidence can be called synchronistic. For astrology to be scientific, it must be able to produce predictions that are both specific and falsifiable. So, for example, when transiting Jupiter conjuncts natal sun, financial gain occurs within 2 degrees orb. That is testable. We have our MA, design a protocol to test synchronicity. 100 participants each have a natal chart. Excuse me, an independent astrologer writes 3 predictions per person. Participants rate accuracy on a 1 through 5 scale compared to placebo control, random predictions. Use binomial test to see if accuracy exceeds chance. Critical thinking exercise, or CTE. Is synchronicity a cop-out for failed astrological predictions? Argue for or against. Astrology works through synchronicity, not causation, so statistical testing is inappropriate. How would Popper respond? All right. On to Module 5, planetary returns and societal cycles. Compute Saturn return, 29.5 years, and its correlation with life transitions. Analyze Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, 20 years, as economic political cycles. Map Pluto's transit through signs, 248 years, onto historical eras. So Saturn return are statistical analysis, retrospective studies. 70% of adults report major life changes between ages 28 through 30. Saturn return, pre and post. Control, some proportion report changes between 26 through 28. No, peak at 29.2 years. All right, this is important. Confounding quarter life crisis is culturally universal. Astrology may be mapping a developmental psychology stage. Holy shit. I get so excited I forget how to speak. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction series, great mutation cycle. So we see conjunction every 20 years, shifts by 120 degrees per cycle, triplicity shift. Earth element conjunctions 1802, 2020 correlate with economic expansion and resource-focused policy. Air element conjunctions from 1980 to 2000, for example, correlate with technology and communication revolutions. In our data exercise, obtain GDP growth rates from 1900 through 2020 aligned to Jupiter-Saturn conjunction years. Adding, subtracting 2 years, test if mean growth differs from the other years. We have Pluto's generational signatures. Pluto in Cancer from 1914 through 1938 brought us World War I, the Great Depression, focus on homeland security. All right. Pluto in Leo from 1938 through 1957 brought us World War II, post-war baby boom, dramatic leadership. Pluto in Virgo, 1957 through 1971, brought us civil rights, health movements, and environmentalism. Pluto in Libra from the 71 through 84 brought us feminism, divorce law changes, and diplomacy. Pluto in Scorpio from 84 through 96 brought us debt culture, AIDS, crises, HIV, deep financial restructuring. Pluto in Sag from 96 through 2008 brought globalization, religious terrorism, expansion of higher education. Pluto in Capricorn from 08 through 2024 brought austerity, authoritarianism, collapse of institutions. These are post-hoc assignments. The challenge is predicting ahead. Pluto enters Aquarius January 2024. Hypothesis is technology-driven decentralization, AI governance, and space exploration. So we have our mathematical application and critical thinking exercise using time series analysis, ARIMA or ARIMA, model the relationship between Saturn return ages and divorce rates. Control for cohort effects, for example, 1970s versus 1990s, report correlation coefficient. And our CTE says generational astrology is tautological if you can always find a historical event matching Pluto's sign. To be scientific, state a falsifiable prediction for Pluto in Aquarius now, tested in 20 years. All right. So, on to Module 6, which is Research Methods in Astrology. Design a double-blind astrological experiment. Perform power analysis to determine sample size. Handle the problem of multiple comparisons, Bonferroni, FDR. Write a paper for a peer-reviewed journal, for example, Journal of Scientific Exploration. All right. So, the Carlson experiment, which occurred in 1985, John McGrew and Sean Carlson in Nature double-blind test of 28 astrologers matching 116 birth charts to 116 psychological profiles. The result is astrologers scored 34% correct, with the chance 33.3% not significant. And our criticisms, astrologers were not chosen for proficiency, psychological profiles were not specific to astrology, and our lesson is negative results can be published if methodology is rigorous. All right. So now we look at our power analysis. To detect a small effect, Cohen's H equals 0.2, equivalent to 55% versus 50% chance. Need N equals 1,600 per group for A equals 0.05, B equals 0.80. Most astrological studies have N being lesser than 200, underpowered, leading to false negatives and false positives. Pre-registration and open data. To combat p-hacking, studies should be pre-registered, for example, aspredicted.org. All data and analysis scripts made public and replication by independent labs. So our practical analysis-based assignment, whatever, write a research protocol. All right, that's what we need to do. Does moon sign correlate with emotional reactivity as measured by daily diary over 30 days? Include the hypothesis, inclusion criteria, sample size calculation, primary outcome measures, statistical test, blinding procedure. Submit as if to an ethics board. All right. Next is Module 7, which is astrological prediction, evaluating accuracy. So we see we are to distinguish between subjective validation, Barnum effect, and genuine prediction. We are to use calibration curves to measure confidence versus accuracy and apply Breer score to astrological forecasts. We look at the Barnum effect in natal readings for 1949. Students rated personalized astrological profiles as 85% accurate, but all received identical vague text. And our control provides specific falsifiable predictions. You will change jobs in March. Accuracy drops to near chance. All right, calibration training. Astrologers predict an event. For example, there is a 70% chance of a romantic encounter this week. Keep log of predictions with confidence levels 50%, 60%, 90%. And after the outcomes, plot observed frequency versus predicted confidence, and well-calibrated astrologers have points near the diagonal line. All right? On to Breer score. Formula is BS equals 1/2 of N. We see where FI, so this calculation bit, is predicted probability, and this bit here, OI, is the outcome. O being 0 or 1, and perfect score is 0. Climatology baseline is variance of outcomes. Astrology useful if BS is lesser than the baseline. And our exercise is to track 20 predictions over 1 month with confidence levels. Compute your Breer score. Compare to baseline, always predicting 50% equals 0.25. Are you better than chance? All right, and our last module here is the future of astrology science. Discuss potential mechanisms, neutrino flux, gravity waves, dark matter. Explore AI applications, machine learning on astrological databases, and outline a research agenda for 2030 through 2050. So, we look at neutrino hypothesis. Sun emits 1038 square neutrinos per second. They pass through matter almost undetected but have mass. Could they influence microtubules, Penrose, Hameroff, or OR theory? No evidence, but it is testable. And we have our machine learning astrology, train a neural network on 10 6-square birth charts with life outcomes from census data. Predict the outcome, for example, marriage age from planetary positions. Does model outperform linear regression? And the danger here is overfitting, and spurious correlations must validate on holdout sample. So, our proposed research agenda is large-scale prospective cohort, registered 100,000 newborns, record birth time to the second, follow for 50 years, test the astrological hypothesis, pre-registered, global network of calibrated astrologers making monthly forecasts for stock market, weather, geopolitical events, aggregate Breer scores, neuroimaging studies, show participants their own versus others' natal charts, measure fMRI activation in default mode network. All right, and then our final project would be to design a 10-year research program for an Institute of Astrological Science, including the budget, personnel, astronomers, statisticians, astrologers, milestones, and ethical considerations presented as a grant proposal. All right. Now we look at our appendix here. Require tools and data sets. So ephemeris software, Swiss ephemeris, is free. It's accurate to 0.001 arcsec. Statistical software is R or Python, Pandas, Skype, stats models. And our data sets, Gauquelin data available from CURA, Astro Databank, ISAR, 60,000 or more verified charts, U.S. Social Security Death Index for longevity studies and textbooks, Astrology and Science by Seymour, The Scientific Basis of Astrology by Percy Seymour, again outdated but classic, and Statistics for Astrologers, Philip Graves. And we conclude saying these modules do not claim that astrology is proven. They claim that astrology can be studied scientifically with falsifiable hypothesis, statistical rigor, and mechanistic models. The advanced astrologer scientist is not a mystic, but a researcher willing to test their beliefs against data. Whether the cosmos actually writes its story in our births remains an open question, but the method is now in your hands for answering this. Ad astra per aspera. Right. Now I wanted to go over this Advanced Astrology Research Journal, and we're just going to check and see how many entries we have here. If I did an appendix. Alright, so it looks like we did 8 in here. So, entry number 1 obviously occurred March 15th in 2024 at 4:17 UTC, and we see our research topic is the antebellum hypothesis, planetary declination, and collective trauma precursors. So our background here is standard transit analysis failed to predict the 9/11 attacks with sufficient lead time. I hypothesized that the declination-based aspects, parallels, and contraparallels ignored by 90% of practicing astrologers provide a 6 to 18-month window for predicting civilizational rupture. Collected declination data for Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus from 1990 through 2005, Swiss ephemeris, 0.01 arcmin precision. Defined a declination storm as 3 or more outer planets within 0.5 degrees of the same declination, north or south, for greater than 7 consecutive days. Tested against historical mass death events, 9/11, 2004 tsunami, 2011 Fukushima. In our preliminary findings from July 2000 to January 2001, the following declination configuration occurred. Pluto, 13 degrees 11 north, stationary. Saturn, 13 degrees 04 north, retrograde loop. We see Uranus, 12 degrees 58, direct. Mars, 13 degrees 15, intermittent, 11 days. And this constitutes a quadruple parallel, a configuration I termed the sardonic tetrad after the ancient sardonic smile of death. The orb, max spread 0 degrees 17, is exceptionally tight. And then we see our original conceptual work here is I propose the declination accumulation coefficient, DAC, a weighted sum where each planet's contribution is multiplied by its angular speed. Faster planets equal shorter influence but sharper trigger. For July 2000, we see DAC equaling 1/2 the speed multiplied by 1/2 of the orb that's squared. So Pluto, speed is 0 degrees 02 per day, contributes heavily. Mercury, speed 1 degrees 115 per day, would contribute negligibly. The 9/11 event occurred 14 months after the DAC peak, suggesting declination configurations prime the collective psyche rather than trigger instantly. And our next step would be to backtest DAC on the 1914-1918 period. World War I obtained declination data for 1913 through 14. Then our hypothesis is DAC peak in late 1913 with Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune in parallel. Alright, entry number 2 is occurring March 22nd, 2024, 9:45 UTC. We see our research topic is the lunar apogee node, a forgotten axis of fatality. Today's breakthrough, while cross-referencing 9/11 victims' charts, n equals 112 from Astro Databank, verified birth times within 2 hours, I noticed a non-random clustering of the transiting black moon Lilith, mean apogee, and hard aspect to natal Saturn, but more striking, the true lunar apogee node, the point where the moon's elliptical orbit intersects the ecliptic at apogee, a point I have never seen used in death studies. Let's look at our data table for selected victims and its rectified times. So our victim pseudonym natal Saturn, transiting Saturn on 9/11, transiting lunar apogee and node aspects. So what do we see here? Well, victim A was 34 years old, was a male with 14 degrees 22 Taurus, natal Saturn and transiting Saturn squared, 14 degrees Gemini 45. transiting lunar apogee, 15 degrees Taurus 01, and node aspect conjunct Saturn 0 degrees 39. Victim B was female, 28 years old, natal Saturn 22 degrees Leo 07, retrograde, and transiting Saturn, of course, 14 degrees Gemini square. We see transiting lunar apogee 22 degrees Leo 55, and node aspect conjunct Saturn 0 degrees 48. And then we have our last victim here, C, male, 41, 3 degrees Scorpio, 11 for natal Saturn, and of course 14 degrees Gem, opposition. And 2 degrees Scorpio, 44 for lunar apogee, conjunct Saturn, 0 degrees 27 for node aspect. So, chi-square calculation, expected frequency of lunar apogee node conjunct natal Saturn within 1 degrees orb equals 1/2 of 360. Multiplied by 112 equals 0.31 victims observed equals 9 victims, x squared equals 242.6, p being lesser than 0.0001. I named this the gatekeeper hypothesis. The lunar apogee node functions as a temporal resonance amplifier for the Saturnine events, death, limitation, karmic closure, mechanism unknown, but I propose it relates to the moon's animalistic cycle, 27.55 days, versus the draconic cycle, 27.21 days. The interference pattern between these two cycles generates a third harmonic of approximately 206 days, which is the average interval between mass death events in my preliminary dataset, n equals 27 events from 1900 through 2020. Critique of self, small sample, that 112 victims are not random. They are those whose families consented to astrological research. Possible selection bias, I will expand to 500 victims from the 9/11 memorial dataset. Names only, no birth times. We'll use noon charts with rectification algorithm. And that's how you do that respectfully, as you can. So, entry 3, our research topic is the zodiacal release, a quantifiable death progression. I have constructed a new predictive technique called zodiacal release, or ZR, inspired by the ancient Hellenistic method of zodiacal releasing from the lot of fortune, but modified for death prediction. All right? We have our algorithm, which is to locate the lot of death, LOD, equaling the ascendant, adding Saturn, subtracting moon for diurnal births, and reverse for nocturnal. Right? Project the LOD through the zodiac at a rate of 1 sign per 1.5 years, based on the average time between major Saturn transits. And when the ZR progression hits 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees from any natal malefic, Saturn, Mars, Pluto, or the lot of death itself, the native enters a critical window of adding, subtracting 45 days. And we can test this on a known case. Princess Diana, who was born July 1st, 1961 at 7:45 p.m. Sandringham, died August 31st, 1997. We see our natal LOD, or Lord of Death, 14 degrees Capricorn 22, calculated via the above formula. ZR, or zodiacal releasing progression from birth to death, 36 years, 2 months equals 24.1 signs, since 1.5 years per sign, so 24 signs equals 0 degrees remainder. Since 24 mode, 12 equals 0 plus 0.1 sign equals 3 degrees of Aries. So ZR position at death, 3 degrees Aries. Angle to natal Mars, 12 degrees Capricorn 44, difference from 3 degrees Aries to 12 degrees Cap, a 99 degrees, a 9 degrees orbed square, acceptable, but more compelling. ZR at 3 degrees Aries was exactly contraparallel in declination to natal Pluto at 9 degrees Virgo 11, declination 12 degrees north versus 12 degrees south, orb 0 degrees 08. ZR's progression's declination component is a true death signature. Longitude aspects give false positives. Declination parallels, contraparallels within 0.5 degrees provide a 90% accuracy rate on any test set like this. N equals 15 celebrity deaths. I will publish this as the Sterling Zodiacal Declination Release, SZDR. We have our critical self-correction. Diana's death was an accident, not a chronic illness. The ZR method works for sudden death. For prolonged illness deaths, for example, Stephen Hawking died 2018. ZR makes a series of minor aspects over 2 through 3 years. Differentiate by angular speed of progression. Fast release, 1 sign over 1.5 years. Predicts sudden, slow release, 1 sign over 3 years. Predicts gradual. I need a separate algorithm, right? Now, we're going to get into our fourth entry. We see April 10th, 2024, 1422 UTC was a research topic, the 9/11 ephemeris, a micro study of the 46 minutes between impacts. Our data, American Airlines Flight 11 struck North Tower at 8:46:30 a.m. EDT. United Airlines Flight 175 struck South Tower at 9:02:59 a.m. EDT. The difference is 16 minutes and 29 seconds. premise here is, if astrology is precise, the chart for 9/02/59 should show a different fatal signature from the 8/46/30 chart, specifically one indicating the second death, tower collapse, prefigured rather than the first. And now we're going to look over our comparative data. So, factor ascendant 0 degrees Libra 21, 2 degrees Libra 08, moved 1 degrees 47, midheaven 7 degrees Cancer 02, 8 degrees Cancer 29, moved 1 degrees 27, moon by 1 degrees per 2 houses 25 degrees Gemini 15, 25 degrees Gemini 27, moved 0 degrees 12, her vertex 27 degrees Taurus 41, 28 degrees Taurus 56, moved 1 degrees 15. It's significant because at 8/46/30, the vertex, a point of fated encounters often linked to death in mundane charts, was at 27 degrees Taurus 41. At 9/02/59, the vertex had moved 28 degrees Taurus 56, just 4 minutes from an exact conjunction with the fixed star Aldebaran 29 degrees Taurus 58. Aldebaran is the watcher of the east, one of the 4 royal stars in Persian astrology. It governed the archangel Michael, protector but also destroyer when crossed. The second impact occurred as the vertex approached Aldebaran within 1 degrees, a judgment drawn close. In our original hypothesis, the 16-minute interval was not random. It allowed the vertex to advance to a star of collective karmic weighing. I termed this vertex stellar resonance VSR. The angular velocity of the vertex, approx 1 degrees per 4 minutes in New York's latitude, determines which fixed stars become activated during an unfolding event. All right. So mathematical model, and we're going to go over our conclusion and on to the next one. So VSR activation. 4 minutes per degree. If the time between 2 event phases, for example, first and second impact, equals or is a multiple of VSR activation, the star signature appears in the second phase. For 9/11, 28 degrees 56 subtracted 29 degrees 58 equals 1 degree 02. 62 minutes of arc at 1 degrees per 4 minutes activation time, 248 seconds, 4 minutes, 8 seconds, but the actual interval was 16 minutes, 29 seconds, which is 4 multiplied by 4 minutes, 8 seconds, 4 multiplied by 4, 13 equals 16.52 minutes, 16 minutes, 31 seconds within 2 seconds of the actual interval. The second impact was timed by the perpetrators unconsciously or by the cosmic design to the fourth harmonic of the vertex of the Aldebaran approach. This is not coincidence. Right. Entry number 5 is occurring April 18th, 2024. 6:55 UTC. Our research topic is planetary node transits, a neglected predictor of ideological violence. Context is Osama bin Laden's birth chart. Shows sun at 19 degrees Pisces, moon at 15 degrees Gemini. Calculated his north lunar node at 16 degrees Scorpio on 9/11. Transiting Ketu was at 11 degrees Cancer, not strongly aspecting. However, the Pluto node, the point where Pluto's orbit crosses the ecliptic, a rarely computed element, was at 12 degrees Sag on 9/11. So, by definition here, Pluto's orbital nodes, ascending and descending, precesses very slowly, completing a cycle every 22,000 years, but the mean Pluto node moves about 0.03 arcseconds per year. For all practical purposes, it is fixed in a lifetime. Bin Laden's Pluto ascending node equals 14 degrees Cancer from his birth epoch. And we see a discovery on 9/11 transiting Pluto node, the true Pluto node, corrected for nutation. Nutation was at 13 degrees Sag 57. That forms an exact square to his natal Pluto node, 14 degrees Cancer with an orb of 0 degrees 03. And why this matters, the Pluto node represents the gateway for plutonic transformation, not personal power, but ideological death and rebirth. A transit to the Pluto node indicates that the native becomes a vessel for a collective plutonic force, losing individual agency. Bin Laden on 9/11 was not acting as a man, but as a transducer for the Pluto node square. I tested this on 20 other historical figures associated with mass death: Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, etc. In 17 of 20 cases, a hard aspect, conjunction, square opposition from a transiting outer planet, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, to their natal Pluto node occurred within 1 degree's orb at the time of their most infamous act. For example, Hitler's Pluto node at 4 degrees Gemini on September 1st, 1939, invasion of Poland, transiting Pluto at 2 degrees Leo square, 2 degrees Leo to 4 degrees Gemini equals 58, not a square. Correction, I miscalculated. Let me compute properly. This is why I must be rigorous. So we have to pre-register hypothesis, so we don't make any more mistakes. But Pluto node hypothesis for the next 10 years of global events. Let the data speak. On entry 6, we're going to talk about the 9/11 North Tower versus South Tower, a chart harmonic analysis. We see here I have developed the event harmonic series, EHS, a method of decomposing any timed event into its planetary harmonic components. Is analogous to Fourier analysis, but for astrological aspects. 2 impact times is the data needed. I treat them as 2 points in a 5-dimensional phase space: longitude, latitude, declination, right ascension, and local hour angle. The difference vector between the two charts yields a harmonic signature unique to the event. Look at the calculations here as an excerpt. So we have our planet longitude 846.30, longitude 902.59, and difference harmonic 360 degrees over the difference. So Mercury 0 degrees Libra, 0 degrees, 15 Libra, and Libra 16, 0 degrees 01, 21,600 equals 2160 multiplied by 10. Mars 10 degrees Sag 42, 10 degrees Sag 42, 0 degrees 00, infinite stationary. We see Jupiter 19 degrees Cancer, 04, 19 Cancer, 04 degrees, 0 degrees 00, infinite. Saturn 14 degrees Gemini 45, 14 degrees Gemini 45, 0 degrees 00, infinite. And Uranus at 21 degrees Aquarius 58, retrograde, 21 degrees Aquarius 58, retrograde, 0 degrees 00, infinite. Our stunning finding: Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus did not move perceptibly in longitude over the 16-minute interval. They were frozen in their positions relative to Earth's rotation because the time difference was too small for their orbital motion to register. But the moon moved 0 degrees 12, and the ascendant midheaven moved significantly. The infinite harmonics division by 0 indicate that these planets were acting as a fixed architectural frame for the event. The moving bodies, moon, ascendant, vertex, then sculpted the detail within that frame. I call this planetary stasis collapse PSC when multiple slow-moving planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, share identical or near-identical longitudes across 2 temporal district phases of a single event. They create a quantum lock that compresses the event into a single karmic unit. 9/11 attacks, though separated by 16 minutes, were astrologically simultaneous for the outer planets. Implication for death event analysis: when PSC occurs, the event functions as a single death blow, even if physically extended in time. Victims of the South Tower were not second, they were part of the same frozen movement. This refuses the naive view that the second impact was a separate event. Alright, now our second to last entry here. This May 2nd, 2024, a unified field theory of astrological fatality, the Sterling tensor. After months of integrating declination science, planetary nodes, fixed star resonance, and event harmonics, I have derived a mathematical formalism that unifies these disparate observations. The Sterling tensor, a rank 2 tensor that maps a 6-dimensional phase space of the natal chart onto a scalar fatality potential function, F squared T. Alright, so here's our combination here. We see that these symbols difference in ecliptic longitude between transiting and natal planet. So I'd put these over here. And then N equals critical orb. Triangle N equals difference in planetary node position. Triangle near the kind of weird retarded Taurus symbol is difference in declination. N equals critical orb, 3 degrees for longitude, 0.5 degrees for declination, and 0.2 degrees for nodes. W_I, weighing factor based on planet's astronomical significance, log of orbital period. And then we have our test on 9/11 victims, N equals 112. For each victim, compute FT for the time of death, 8:46:30 compared to FT for a random time 24 hours earlier. Use paired t-tests. Result is mean FT at death, 0.843, mean FT at control, 0.212, difference at 0.631, p equals 0.0003. 95%, CI 0.45 through 0.81, sensitivity is 78%, specificity is 82% at threshold 0.5%. The Sterling tensor demonstrates that astrological fatality is not a single aspect. For example, Saturn square Moon put a multi-dimensional congruence across several coordinate systems. The universe encodes death as a specific geometric relationship between the native's chart and the transiting sky, a relationship that can be quantified and, in principle, predicted. It requires extremely precise birth time within 2 minutes. For most historical figures, rectification introduces error that swamps the signal. And the tensor is computationally intensive. ON4 square with N equals 10 planets, 10,000 operations per minute of time. Not practical for daily use, but as a research tool, it proves that astrology can be mathematically rigorous. Right, and our final essay, or entry, is from May 10th, 2024 for exact UTC. Final reflection, the ethics of prediction. I have spent 8 weeks developing tools that can, with statistical significance, identify windows of elevated death risk. Sterling tensor works, declination accumulation coefficient works, vertex stellar resonance works, but I will not publish the predictive algorithms. Imagine a client comes to me in 2000. I run their chart through the tensor. I see a 78% probability of death on September 11, 2001. What do I tell them? Don't go to work at the World Trade Center? They laugh. I insist. They quit their job. The attack happens. They live. Am I a hero? Or did I just terrorize someone with probabilistic data that had a 22% false positive rate? The other 22% of people I warned would have quit their jobs for nothing. Some might have died in car accidents. On the way home, some might have developed anxiety disorders. Stars incline, they do not compel, but we compel when we make predictions. The astrologer's greatest sin is not inaccuracy, it is the infliction of certainty where only probability exists. From this day forward, I will use the Sterling tensor only for retrospective research. Maybe. The universe gave us free will for a reason. Stars are the script, but we are the actors, and the best actors do not read their own reviews before the final curtain. Alright, in the next video, actually, because we're running low on time, we'll talk about alien case studies, NHIs, and field reports in regards to advanced astrology. And I hope to see you there. Piscean out.